So, moving on to the second pick of the draft, we're going to talk about Brandon Miller. You know, yesterday I did a video about Victor and how that's going to work for his team, but second overall, Brandon Miller was selected to the Charlotte Hornets, and I want to talk about this. I think it was the right pick in terms of fit. You know, Charlotte already has their star guard, and they have a secondary guard. You know, they have a scoring guard in Terry Rozier, and they have a secondary guard in, and they have a superstar in LaMelo Ball. Also, they've drafted all of their big men already. You know, they've done that. They drafted Mark Williams. They have P.J. Washington, which serves as a power forward. And they've really had every position, you know, filled with at least a decent to good player, right? The only position that they were struggling in was the small forward. For most of the year, they ran Gordon Hayward. And yes, even though Gordon Hayward is good, let's face it, for a team which you want to have for the future and which you want to contend for years to come, Gordon Hayward, a guy who's old, injury prone, and who always has problems. So, in summary, they needed a small forward, right? And Brandon Miller was a phenomenal pickup. You know, he's 6'9", he's tall, he weighs about 180 pounds or so, 190 pounds. And he's been consistently one of the best players in college, right? Playing for Alabama. And honestly, he is a very talented player. Brandon Miller averages 18 no. He averages Brandon Miller averages 19 points per game, a steal, a block on 40% from three, and basically 50% from two. His field goal percentage is kind of skewed since he takes more threes than he takes twos. So, taking that into consideration, his field goal percentage looked much worse than what it actually is. But he is efficient from 3-point range and from 2-point range. He's mostly a slasher when it comes to two-pointers. You know, he likes to get to the rim. You don't see him doing that many acrobatic things, or, you know, when it comes to a guy like Scoot, was the third overall pick, Scoot likes to go and run fast and make more acrobatic Derrick Rose, Russell Westbrook style layups. But when it comes to Brandon Miller, he's more of just like a catch and shoot demon who plays defense and has really great positioning for rebounds, right? As he averages 8.2 rebounds and 2.1 of them are offensive rebounds. And in my opinion, that's insane, especially from a guy in college. So what we can see from Brandon Miller is that he completes a lot of the needs for Charlotte, right? He is good, right? Like, has good mentality. He has been one of the best players in college and has been phenomenal when it comes to his stats and how he plays the game. They can utilize him a lot because since their star player is a passer and this guy's mostly a three-point shooter, then they could get some advantage out of that. And in the end, Charlotte is going to get a lot of run from Brandon Miller because he fills in every single need that they have. They needed a small forward. They needed someone to get some rebounds, right, or have good positioning on rebounds. They needed someone who could stretch the floor effectively and also have enough legs to create their own shot, right? And they needed somebody to play second fiddle or at least to be the co-star to LaMelo Ball. So, in my opinion, this was a great pick for Charlotte. But the real question that we have to ask here is, do you take what's best for your team or do you take best available option? I'm saying this because, as we all know, really the number two overall pick, right? Like everyone knew that Victor was going to be number one. Victor Wembanyama, obviously, I already made a video about him. He's transcendent, he's generational, whatever. But for the second overall pick, it was a real debate of Scoot Henderson versus Brandon Miller, right? And the debate mostly stemmed from, are you picking the better player, which is Scoot Henderson, or at least, that's what it's projected. Like, Scoot Henderson is a more complete player. He's the star of his team, right? Like, even though, yes, Brandon Miller is the star of Alabama, but he's mostly limited to just catch and shoot or 3-point opportunities, right? Like, he's not the one making all the passes. He's not the one making all the plays like that. With Scoot, he runs an offense in the G League. With the G League Ignite, he runs that offense. He's the one tasked. He's starting for that team. And yes, Brandon Miller is starting too, but they're both players who have had extreme run and who are now getting put to the test. They both have flaws. Like, Brandon Miller, in my opinion, could utilize his size more to get to the rim, and he could use his body, because even though, yes, he does dunk a lot, right, and he does use his body, he is not scared to dunk. In my opinion, he could be a way better slasher. He could learn from, like, young Pacers Paul George, because if you guys don't know, Brandon Miller said that Paul George was the best player of all time. And in my opinion, he could learn how to just get to the rim more. And Scoot could learn how to shoot better, as he's not that great of a shooter. But honestly, if we total everything up, does this pick make sense for Charlotte? What do you do in their situation? Do you build a young backcourt and just entrust that those two guys can make it make sense, right? Or do you get a player which complements your star, right? Because even though, yes, let's face it, Brandon Miller does complement LaMelo extremely well, but Scoot Henderson's ceiling, or at least what it's projected to be, is probably much bigger than what Brandon Miller's ceiling is. So, I don't know, honestly. This situation has been really interesting, but in my opinion, like, about the kid, Brandon Miller, I believe that he's a phenomenal player. Brandon Miller can score effectively from three. He can make a lot of his two-pointers, right? He's a good scorer, a great rebounder, especially a great offensive rebounder. And he's been one of these players which is a rare breed to find. He's disciplined, he's team-oriented, and he's going to be extremely good for the Charlotte Hornets if he keeps playing like he's been playing. He is a player who, I don't know, it can be the main star. I look at him as more of like a Jaylen Brown than a Jason Tatum. But when you're in a team with LaMelo Ball, then you won't ever have to be the main star, as he's so popular and so famous. So, I like the pick. The more I've looked into this guy, I'm more of a Scoot Henderson guy, if I'm being honest, but that just comes from that I like his game more, right? And I like how he plays basketball more. But in my opinion, taking bias aside and just really focusing in on the game and what positions fit best, the Charlotte Hornets took the player which fit their team the most and which made most sense for the way that they are building this team. They got their star point guard, they got him some young colleagues, then they got him a center, right? They got him some shooters around him, and now they get him the position which they needed, which was a small forward. So let's see what happens with Charlotte.